Welcome to Slope Reliability, the show where we learn about reliability, observability, and resilience one day at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Townsend. Welcome back to Slope Reliability. I'm Stephen Townsend, and this is the show where we learn about SRE, observability, tech leadership. And today I'm joined by guest Xiao Zhang, a coach, creator, and founder whose journey has taken her from China to the US and now to Wellington, New Zealand. Good to have a fellow Kiwi on the show. She spent most of her career where technology meets human transformation and describes herself as an introvert who recharges alone but comes alive in meaningful conversation. Hopefully we have one of those today. Building a company, that's her scariest adventure yet, though parenting still wins for chaos and joy. Yes, I agree. How are you today, Xiao?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be here.
It's good to have you. And as many people know, I've been doing quite a lot more content about tech leadership because that's what I'm going through right now. And it's hard and there's no playbook and you know, it gets lonely as soon as you become a leader. So I love talking about this stuff. Tell me a little bit more about your journey into, you founded a company, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
What was your pathway to getting to that place and how did it come about?
Oh, wow. My pathway to that, of course, born and raised in China, right? There's this silly system, learning system where you can either choose art or science. You can't do both before you go to college. So I was forced to choose something, which I chose the art. I thought it was easier. But the logic mind in me, I used to go to like coding competition as a kid and all that. You're craving for that. So I think it triggered some sort of rebellious thought of like, why couldn't I do both? So I had to went to the States after college to say, I still really want to study, you know, the engineering part of the things and all that. So after graduation, that's taken me on to love the engineering bit of it, like the automation, the things you push the button, things just work. It was so good. And then somehow got me into this track of, gosh, the communication was really the challenge for me, and especially with a different culture and all that. I've landed with that conclusion that it's not the technology that's not working, right? It's the humans, the communications, expectations, and all that. So I sort of phased into project management side of things, of knowing tech enough, but really working with people, communicating the vision, all that. Still doing both sides of, you know, the human side, but also the technical side of things. And then when I moved back to China, it was a perfect opportunity of leading teams doing digital product. And it was fascinating. It was agile movement was just started in China. And that was empowering in a way that seeing people light up and building product that matters. And after we had our first child and decided New Zealand is the next phase of our life and moving here, I got thrown into big transformation teams where a lot of the learning I had was working with, you know, single or two team product. I got into a hole of, I don't know, am I stop optimizing everything? Because everything I've learned, right? I can't talk to customers. They're like 7 steps away. And even if I did, there's my team still man everything else. I think I just start to get into a phase of my life where I felt like I'm banging my head of things that I really enjoy doing, passionate about, but I couldn't really make that impact that I used to be able to make. And that for a while, and of course that identity shift of, you know, you're no longer leading from the front, you're actually enabling more people, like all throw together, moving country, culture, moving career. I think I've got into this phase of, I don't know what's next for me, but I know what was working is no longer working. And yeah, I think eventually, I don't know if it's the courage of it, just, you know, the pressure cooker getting to that moment and be like, I think I just need to take a break and think of something else. And then luckily I've met a few, some of them become my co-founder. I think a few important person in my life that supported me on that journey. And then I guess took a leap of faith in that sense. It's almost, the timing almost worked when I was pondering what's next, maybe taking a step back from the career that I had. And then, you know, New Zealand economy, government budget cut. It's like, actually, I can take this redundancy and actually rethink. So that was my
Yeah.
springboard into funding my own company with my fellow co-founders.
I'm not going to say that we're thinking the same thing, but it's in the last 4 or 5 years that my thinking has gone completely away from technology into realizing, what really matters is that it's the interface between technology and people. And actually the people side of it, the majority of the time is we don't consciously do anything to improve it, but it probably makes up 90% of what is working or not working. And I love that, and I'm excited by that, and that's one of the reasons I got into leadership. I think that this current wave of AI is almost undermining that, because there's so much talk about, to make things simpler and faster and better and enrich and new features, AI. And it's like, I just think to myself, any organization of any size is a massively complex system of people and process and structure and technology. And when you throw AI in that, it's even more noise. If things are dysfunctional to begin with, it's just going to make it wildly more dysfunctional potentially. I don't know. What are your thoughts on AI and what it means?
Exactly. You can see me fiercely nodding here. It's so dangerous. I think that modern organizations, like you said, already has a lot of dysfunctions. Like in tech world, you call it tech debt, right? But there are so many other things. We've built up communication debt, right? We're building up those, hard conversation debt because we just avoid having them and all of that. And I think with AI, it's magnifying some of the challenges we already have. And I don't know, I feel like there's a tipping point coming when people start to realize is you don't need more automation. The things that's gonna stop you move forward still lies on the human side of things. And it reminds me of something, I can't quite remember who said it, but it's like, if you're throwing AI better tools into the same level of thinking that created the problem from begin with, right? You're not really actually helping it. You're probably creating some sort of reinforcing phenomenon that just snowball what wasn't working because it's the same mindset that you're applying is measuring output, is valuing busyness and not really looking at what are we really trying to value and uphold here. Is it better understanding of the users who's using our product, or you're just trying to automate the process? And so I think that's my worry with AI, or potentially also hope with AI is maybe it accelerates, what we haven't seen and choose to ignore because it's reaching a tipping point. But the reality is when I talk to people day to day, it's enhanced fear in the conversation of worrying, what that means, but also feeling that there's not much they can do other than they've been forced into a position to catch up with it. And that's something I deeply worry. And then my co-founders deeply worry, like, where's the agency in this? Is we choose to shape the future that's coming versus I have to jump on this wagon because otherwise I'm going to be left behind. That's a two completely different mindset.
I can see that. Yeah. Oh man, I just think, I know this isn't the topic of the episode. Yeah. I just think, because I said recently when I did a retro for the podcast that I'd speak my mind a little bit more. I just think that AI isn't a strategy, it's a tool. And if you, as the human beings, don't truly understand the organization they work for in terms of like I said, that socio-technical, the people, everything, the complexity of the process, the dysfunction, where are the challenges? What are the things you want to achieve? If we don't understand those things, then AI is not probably going to provide you much value. It might just make things worse. I think it's when you do that, that's hard work, right? It's hard work to understand these things,
Yeah.
But if you do, then that's the time when you're like, okay, now I have a new tool and I can see how that could help alleviate this pain. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. It's that clarity. Sometimes it's about doing the minors. It's interesting because I totally jump on the agile movement and all that. But when I jumped from that traditional project management, I'm like, there's still so many things that are still relevant, right? Where you're going, clear communication, knowing, whose strengths, right? None of those gonna go away. That the agile methodologies and all of that helped show you problems more faster, which is great. But without that clarity of where this organization is going, our impact, the system thinking, right? The connections between each part, like without considering all of those, better tools, no, they won't get you anywhere. Yeah.
So I'm sure I've spoken on this podcast. If not, I've spoken it somewhere anyway, about how once you become a leader, there's a whole, if you've been an individual contributor, probably a hands-on engineer of some kind, and you go into your first people leadership management role, it's often, there's no book to teach you what to do. It's often, what am I doing? And coupled with that, you often feel quite alone because your boss might be, have just hundreds or thousands of people to report to them and need to be in lots of places that they can't mentor you really closely, right? Yeah. You might have peers, but none of them work in your unique context as well. So that's where we get onto your company, Orion Group. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that and this idea behind it.
There's multiple seeds that led to the birth of Orion, but one of them is, as you described, first you're changing roles, right? You're questioning what's my new value here, and knowing that is not enough, because when you're leading in meetings and people look at you for answers, you feel like, oh my God, let the team down. But actually, right? Is that the right? Is it you're shifting yourself and you're helping the team to see you differently as well? So that's so hard. And one of the drive that kind of led to the birth of Orion is all of those things that you need to do once you get to your first people leadership role are skill sets, similar to the technical skills that you need to not only understand them, know they're available, but practice them. And a lot of the leaders that I've worked with, and even myself in that transition, is where do I practice, right? Where is a safe ground to practice? I don't want to practice on my team. I don't know what I'm doing, right? And where's the feedback coming? And it's actually helping me constantly self-locate where am I on the journey. So it's not, and then especially, I think the Chinese culture is similar, that the feedback you get are not that nutrient in a way that it does affirm like you did something well, or it's people's preference that they like the way you did it, not necessarily the way that actually helps the growth of the entire system. So how do you get useful feedback, continue practice, and in a relatively safe environment, and you can also see what other peers are doing at the same time. So what you said about actually having a mentor, I think that has tremendous value. And then it also sometimes depends on, how early you discover them and who's available around them. Once you discover them and they're so valuable having them, but where do I go about finding them in the first place? So a lot of that is the idea contributing to what we call Leadership Gym. Is, don't make it an online course, because we don't get fit by watching people work out, right? Yeah. You can learn workout, I guess tricks and skills, tips of the knowledge of, but you still have to go do it. So step away, step inside the gym, practice it, get feedback, learning with peers. That was the idea.
I'm just thinking of some of the things that I've found challenging in the last couple of years. One of them is giving tough feedback and calling things out. Is that the kind of thing you might practice in the leadership gym?
Yeah, definitely. Feedback is everywhere in our program. We still cluster the practice by season, a different kind of main focus. But yes, practicing giving feedback, practice receiving feedback, because it's amazing how, I guess, the way we receive feedback can decide your growth trajectory in a way. If you're knowing how to receive feedback, how to ask for feedback, and then, take what's working and really work on that, rather than, letting, most of the time it's our emotions, right? It's like, oh, I like this feedback, I'm going to do more of, rather than I don't trust this person, or is it relevant type of thing. You just, right? It's like, okay, acknowledge, done. how do you kind of mind the gold in those feedback and then use what's serving you and take it with you rather than getting defeated, rather than, just shut down or being, I guess, biased towards just selecting ones that, you feel good about. So it's an art and a practice of working on how to receive big feedback and then asking for the feedback that's serving you. And then at the same time, giving feedback and, having those hard conversations. And I guess essentially be able to do it in real time, which is hard. Yeah. That's why we have the practice concept, right? You come in, you do prepare. You have someone who's not that high stake. You can role play it to actually, in real life, you can pause, right? I'm feeling under the water. Well, it's a metaphor that we use. Well, I think we've learned from Brene. She probably got it from somewhere else, but it's like, I am going below the waterline. I'm struggling. I'm having this fear knocking on me that I can't actually prepare to receive this well. Can we take a pause? Do that. Like, it's really hard skills to do. So yes, feedback is important. And then we also look at the feedback in the system. Sometimes delayed feedback. You don't get them. Do you overcorrect of what you do, the product design, all that at different levels. But yes, it is a very important topic in the gym.
In the interests of everyone out there who might think that just because I'm talking about the stuff that I'm really good at it, I'm not necessarily. I really struggle giving tough feedback because I'm just not I don't like making people feel unpleasant, right? And I also tend to empathize too much and put myself in other people's shoes too much. To there's a level of compassion versus empathy, kind of however you want to define it as well. The other thing is receiving feedback. I outwardly say I want complete, honest, candid feedback. That's not to say that when I get it, I'm not going to go inside. I guess knowing myself, my own reaction is often to be a bit defeatist, like, oh, I'll never be able to do that, that kind of thing. So it's hard. This is hard stuff.
It is absolutely. Like, same here. I'm working progress. It's like, growing up in China, it's like I have a pleaser in me. And then there's also controller. One of my leadership challenge I have to edge I have worked for a long time is overtaking responsibility. You have this, I think many tech leaders that I know, they have this duty of care. They show up and they really care about the people. And then sometimes I'm not saying they're taking apparent stances, but they want to protect the team. And I think the underlying assumptions of mental models is, I'm in a position to, I guess, protect you or take more responsibility in the organization. And sometimes relating to me, for me giving feedback, I sometimes worry how people's going to perceive it, right? It's like, it feels like it's all my responsibility to make sure that the feedback, is well supported. I'm coming with, the right mindset, and also thinking 3 steps ahead of how this person could interpret it. And going into the practice is like, well, right, of course, building trust and all that, and then sharing your style and all that, but also letting the other person interpret it and share how that feedback has landed. That's how this going to be continuous working, building our relationship, building habit of we can do this all together versus, overtaking responsibility of like, this has to land right. And exactly like you said, it's hard. And then we're humans, we're wild. And then sometimes during a good day, right, if you can take that feedback, and other days you're like, I can't. But building that shared language is so important. I used to work with a coach, and then we get to so familiar with giving each other feedback. And then one day he says, Xiao, can I give you feedback? I'm like, John, sorry, not today. You can do that once you actually forming that relationship and habit. So, yeah.
Yeah. The trust is so important. The other thing that made me think about when you were talking about how sometimes it's okay to say, no, I don't want the feedback today. Can we talk about it another time?
Yeah.
A little bit aligns to what I've been thinking a lot about recently is in the modern era where there's so much stuff happening all the time, there's this sense of we've got to give answers, we've got to respond, we've got to solve problems quickly in the moment all the time. There's just not enough slow thinking, just stopping and saying, if someone comes to you with something difficult, leaving more space. It's okay to give feedback and then go, let's have a think about this and come back in a day or two, digest it. You don't have to respond straight away, or, I don't know. There's something there about giving things more space. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One thing, it's interesting, although I'm not surprised from the practice in our gym this year. So we run 3 quarters already, and they're on different, I guess, muscles, right? One is on understanding self, one is on collective leading, the current one is on system thinking. But one theme that is common across all this year's practice is leaders in the gym realize how pausing has that power. It's like pausing is an act of active leadership here, because in an environment of busy, in an environment of go, 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 choosing intentionally to slow down and just take an inventory of, what's going on with me, what's going on with the whole team, this relationship, this conversation that's going. And it's so trivial, but sometimes that is a big shift for where the conversation could go or where the trajectory could go. So when you said that space, I think that's it. It's like I'm recency biased because I'm reading Brene Brown's new book. So it's like a lot of things is kind of, it reminds me of something I've heard audiobook. She said that it's a constant drive to go, to deliver, to go faster. But if there's no space and if there's no expansiveness, there's no growth. Yeah, so it's like what you said, that's the space. And I think the past, I guess, 5 years of my career, I've really grown into this concept of holding space. And yeah, I had tremendous value when I got into kind of coaching individuals and all that. It's like, you're just there, hold space, but it has so much value.
I'm going to have to link the book you mentioned in the description for anyone who wants to read it. Sounds like I need to read it too. The other thing it makes you think about is, shout out to Carl Laird, who was a principal engineer I used to work with. He got me into all kinds of things, but including the Phoenix project. He sort of started my journey on thinking about the bigger picture. But he shared an article about slack time and the importance of it, and how work culture has changed since the 70s, where people they had a lot of time during the day where there wasn't a thing they had to be doing. And that was so important, because it gave, you think about systems thinking, it gave the system the ability to adapt and address the unplanned work and the unexpected and events, and the system could cope with that. Now we just fill our days up with so much stuff, and there's just it's always a bit prioritization exercise. It's either I can do that or not that. But the other thing I think is that when you have that downtime, that slack time, when you get a little bit bored, it can be fantastic, because that's the time you start to really unconsciously, the really powerful part of your brain that you're not in control of starts really digesting about what's going on. How could this be better? What are the problems? Like, why does this feel weird? What is that? I think that's really powerful as well. Another aspect of slack time.
Yeah. It reminded me of a conversation I had with my coach. I was, of course, struggling with, being busy and all that. And one of the key insights I had from that conversation is actually, for me to be productive and creative, I can only probably work 4 hours a day. That is my threshold. And you mentioned things start a little bit bored and things start to bubbling up and all that. That's how I get creative. And the thing is, and it ties back to kind of career shift and engineering, all that. So I was growing up, my dad is an engineer. So growing up, and then I was raised with no religious belief as well. So growing up, I was so, I guess, not necessarily worship, but like the right thing to do is being logical, analytical, right? To traceability, I guess, science, and what do you call them? Empiricism, right? Which is like one big thing really good for, agile movement, right? Like, what can you measure? And I think as I grow older and then get into leadership, human side of things, and creative, stuff. I often create games for learning purposes. Trusting my body and trusting that there are things that with the science that is available to me or, that I know of, you can't really explain that with that cause and effect or how does it work. But there's still power there that like there's all there that if you let it, it will happen. And so instead of fighting for it, like, I can't measure this. There's no evidence, so I can't. So if I put that aside, right, with that slack time, that space, and letting those energy flow, yeah, creativity will happen. Some things that it's there in the system, when I think about, human system, we're trying to influence change. You can't get them through dashboard. You get them through working the floors, talking to people, and actually have some slack time and sit back and let your brain do the hard work that it knows how to do, but you don't know how to explain. And then some connection happens. And yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
It's a little bit like that, you have these great ideas in the shower or when you're out walking the dog or something. It's because you're not trying, and this is part of your brain which is incredibly powerful. It can do stuff so much faster than you can consciously make it do, and it just clicks, in the background.
Yeah, and create the space, let it happen. That's the thing. I think we've been deprived of those spaces these days. Yeah,
I know, it's everything. You look at our kids now; they're always stimulation, phones. Anyway, that's a bigger topic, but. Yeah. I also wanted to say, you were talking about the data and measuring, being empirical about things. There's a lot of things that we are tracking, which when you really think about it, are completely meaningless. So the metrics that we choose, you have to be so careful about them, and they can be gamed, and that, it's so much bigger than that. So, the example because we're on a podcast about reliability, mean time to MTTR, mean time to recovery, or just, whatever you want to call it, it's been statistically shown to be completely meaningless, right? And yet so many people, it gives them so much confidence. They feel very important. If we bring down the average time to remediate an issue, then we're in the right direction. Is that a true statement? Apparently completely not, right? But there's so many numbers like that we track and to give us a sense of we are moving in the right direction. And then you get to leadership and people, and how do you come up with numbers that mean something, right? I don't know if you can. Maybe you don't need to.
Yeah, it's a question to behold. I love that question. One of the things that when we created Orion, we stumble across this thing when working with AIs and all that, Xiao Zhang. So we have at the moment have a sentence that under our signature says, "In the growth, outwardly seen and universally felt." It is something about the harder to measure part of human growth. And especially when it's inner growth, sometimes you can feel like I've gained confidence, I'm calmer. And it doesn't really show up on any organizational metrics of dashboards and all that. But if you're playing the long game, right, eventually you see, people being creative, more productive and all that, you will see that. But it's such a long lagging indicator that nobody wants to trust it. And it's so subjective, right? So how do you create that for beyond the individuals and you have connection with, which is a big challenge for organizations. But like you said, right, do we need any metric? It does bring that comfort.
You might be doing surveys. I mean, most organizations do some kind of culture survey to get a sense of the people. But then based on the culture, people might feel more like they'll be going to be honest about things. It might turn out that if you've got more of a negative sentiment, it's because people trust you enough to really tell you how it is. Even though it's anonymous, I know so many people who are like, I don't trust it. I'm not going to answer because they'll track me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you remind me of something. It's like, yes, of course, culture surveys, they're being so long. I was listening to Dave Snowden's speech many years ago. Dave Snowden, the guy, I think in the agile world, people know him as the Connectome framework, who created knowing which, problem domain you're in and all that. So watching his speech, and he was saying that the only way to understand a complex system is not through modeling it, is through interact with it. And he specifically talks about human systems. Like, yes, you can do some modeling to understand, right, the patterns, the relationship. But the only way to understand it is to engage with it, through conversations, which I guess in his domain, safe to fail experiment of really sensing where the energy is, where, people want to go and all that. And I think that's the lens with culture surveys and all that. Yes, you have a static snapshot of people view, and of course you can questioning how forthcoming they're with. But you can't really do much with that static data. You really need to engage with your system, human system, to help it move forward. I think that's the power with kind of complexity thinking and all that, and then adding to that, not just what's measurable. Be careful of what you measure for sure. But what about the things that's so hard to measure and we choose not to, but it has so much value and could tell you so much more about not only are we doing the right thing, but who decide what right is.
Well, I have to say, I don't know, I feel good after this conversation. Like genuinely, I've been feeling a bit unwell recently and my head's all over the place, but I don't know, there's something about the way that you talk about these ideas and some of the things that have clicked in my mind as we've spoken today. I feel really good, feel really calm. So thank you for that.
Great. I feel the expansiveness of this conversation too. I like that.
I know we are talking about things, and there's so much that we could continue to go on. And but I think this is a good little introduction, and I would like to get you back if you're interested at some point and explore this further.
I would love to. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming on the show and taking the time to have this chat. I hope it was okay for you. Yes,
it was an absolute pleasure. We talked about so many things and it's been great. Thank you.
And for everyone else out there, I hope you have a wonderful week or two, and see you next time.